Welcome to the 10X Blueprint Podcast, your guide to unlocking 10X growth through AI, AR, and Web3. Join Simone Knight, billion-dollar media strategist and founder of Brandiverse Marketing, for discussions with industry leaders about harnessing the power of tomorrow's technologies today. Let's step into the Brandiverse. Hello, and welcome to Season 2 of the 10X Blueprint Podcast. My name is Simone Knight, and today my special guest is none other than Nima Schei, or should I say Dr. Nima Schei. He is a founder of Hummingbirds AI and also founder of the Miami AI Club. Welcome, Nima. How are you?
Thank you. And thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be in your podcast in this beautiful season.
Absolutely, right. This holiday season, we got a little fireplace going in the background, got a little coolness. So we are on the opposite ends of the weather, right? You're in Miami right now getting some 75, 80-degree Christmas weather. And here I am in the mountains in Georgia. So loving this difference here. So Nima, you've been in AI for a while. Like I said, you're an MD, you're a philosopher. I want to understand a little bit about you and how your background in philosophy and neuroscience led you into AI.
Thanks so much for asking this question. It's a very good question. So I wouldn't call myself a philosopher, basically self-taught philosopher, that would be a term. But yes, I would call myself a neuroscientist, and I did medicine. I studied medicine, got my medical degree because of my fascination for the intelligence and the consciousness and why are we making decisions, what's mind, how we have emotions. All of those question marks in my head led me to study medicine, and then my fascination for finding the answers from neuroscience and the science of the brain led me to study neuroscience.
Wow. I mean, you've been doing a lot in terms of connecting the dots between neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and emotion, the science of emotion. Now, one of the things I find super interesting is your motto is bringing mind to the machines. Can you explain what that really means and why that is your motto?
Absolutely. So when I went to medical school, that's around 22 years, and with that fascination for the brain, psychology, neuroscience, I ended up in the computer science program and learning coding. And at that time, I realized that everybody in the engineering world, they have a different mindset than us, that we are coming from the biological background. So we study things, we study nature, we study the brain and how it works. They try to build something that is a little bit isolated than what the reality of the nature is. So the neurons, the neural networks that we have in the AI world is much different than the ones that we have in the actual brain in terms of the capabilities. So with that fascination of our brain, I tried to mimic how the actual brain of the humans and mammalians work, and then bring that to the engineering, and specifically in the control engineering. We said that the simplest action or the simplest machine is a controller that has basically an output to, like, a temperature, like increase the weather when it's cold, or increase the temperature or decrease the temperature when it's too hot. So that's the simplest decision maker. And then we studied how the brain actually is making those decisions. When it comes to our brain, we don't rely on logic only, but we rely on a very complicated decision-making process at the base of the brain, which involves the logic, emotions, and intuition. And so it's a way more complicated than the case that if this happens, do this, if that happens, do that. And so we started creating the first controllers that mimics how the brain makes the decision, and then brought that to the control engineering.
Wow. I mean, that sounds extremely complicated and super impressive to bring the thinking of a human being and the emotions into the mechanism of a computer. I mean,
Let me make that a little bit more touchable. So let's say we enter to a room and we haven't been into that room. In a moment, in less than a second, in milliseconds, we have a feeling about the room. This is a little bit intimidating. This is a little bit scary. Or no, I feel calm. That's the first millisecond reaction that we have. So that's the intuition. Then after that, we start analyzing what is in the room, who are they in the room. And then with that analysis takes more time. So that's the more of the logic. So in the base of our brain, when all of the sensations from the eyes, ears, and all of that comes to the brain, they come to the base of the brain. And then from that base of the brain, it spreads out towards the surface of the brain. So that means that at the base of the brain, we have that intuition in milliseconds that yes, this is, I have to have like a fear or what kind of emotion should I have? And then we make that decision to analyze things. That's the more of the surface of the brain.
Well,
So you
is
can,
that when someone arrives at a party, let's say, and you're trying to figure out, do I like it here? Do I not like it here? These are the split decisions that you're making the moment you walk through the door. Your eye scans the room and your brain starts sending you signals in terms of fight, flight, happiness, scared, whatever the case is. And so you're bringing that sort of neuroscience into the computer world.
exactly. Or in your case, in the case of the marketing world, let's say the first impression that you get from, let's say, an ad that you are watching, right? That's the
Mhm.
first second, that split of the second is the most important one because that's the first impression that you hook the viewer to watch the rest or not. So that's the intuition part. And then the user goes through that journey of the movie or of the ad, and that's of more of the logic based.
I love that comparison because, of course, in marketing and business, what we do is called eye tracking, right? And you set up the user or the viewer to watch the ad and you look at their emotions. You're analyzing their emotions as to whether or not they like it. And you're looking for these micro facial expressions of did they raise their eyebrow? Did they frown? Did they smile a little bit? All of this body language should tell what people's perceptions are to a particular ad or to a particular product, and so you're mimicking all of that in the machine world. And, that's amazing. So here's my question. What are you going to do with all of that? Once you see all of that, once you figure that out and you actually bring the mind to the machines, as you said, what is the application of all of that?
Absolutely. Just then go a little bit into the historical side of that. So when we started, we realized that humans are way more complicated in terms of their emotions and decision making. So back then, the hypothesis, or everybody was saying that emotions are bad, rely on our logic. And our view was that if emotions are bad, why are we emotional animals? If emotions are bad, we should have lost the emotions during the evolution. And the fact that we are still making decisions based on emotions shows that there is an advantage to that. So we studied how the emotional processing is done at the base of the brain. We created the model of that and then put that model in that controller that I mentioned. So that that controller, let's say for the controlling of the temperature of the room, would have the similar decision-making processes that we have in the base of our brain. And we were successful. We showed that these controllers, they make better decisions. It's proven through the last 20 years that they are superior in their decision making. They make decisions faster because when you see a lion, you just run away. You don't think about your different options. That's the instantaneous response that we just talked about. And they need less computation power because it's instantaneous at the base of the brain. So the data doesn't need to go through too much of the process. So you can imagine that this is a superiority, all of the things that would be important for an engineer in that regard, which is the speed, the accuracy, and the less resources that it would be needing. That's come from where? From biology, from the brain, from learning from how the actual brain works. And so that was the aha moment that we can actually build more and more applications based on the way that this beautiful architecture that we have in our brain and bringing that into different components of artificial intelligence. And I'm just talking about artificial intelligence. I would like to call AI not artificial intelligence, but I would like to see that as an alternative intelligence,
Mm.
seeing that as a different form of intelligence rather than calling it artificial intelligence.
As you're talking about this, I know that recently you've been doing a lot of work around, bringing the transformative power of artificial general intelligence, AGI, more to the forefront and have people talking about that. And I want to talk a little bit about the three different types of AI, as we were saying, right? We got narrow intelligence, general intelligence, and super intelligence. And I don't think a lot of people realize that there are three different types and where we are right now. So, can you talk just a little bit about those three different types and the AGI itself? And, what are the big opportunities you see coming in AGI?
When it comes to AI, I would like to answer your question with not only the opportunities, but opportunities and risks, because I see any innovations that are happening that had those two components. Talking about some examples that I always love to bring up, for example, the plastic revolution that we had that in 1800s. And then in 1950s and World War II, we had more usage of plastics. This is a beautiful innovation. It had so many good advantages, but at the same time, we are seeing the Great Pacific Garbage Patch that is becoming increasingly larger and larger, and we don't have any tools to mitigate that. That becomes so big of a snowball that we can't really contain it anymore. With any innovation, the more impact that it also has both sides of that impact, which could be the potential risk that it brings. So before going to AGI, which I think we are all rushing towards AGI, let's talk about the AI side of things, the artificial intelligence side of things. And I see that there's a huge potential in artificial intelligence. Again, when I started 20 years ago, it was very different than what we have now. We have so many possibilities now. And at the same time, with those possibilities, there are so many risks that we are trying to address because we see that we don't want this invention only be for the benefit of the few that are the AI builders like us, but it needs to be a tool for the whole society to benefit from that. And so from the opportunity side, I see that even the AI innovations that are happening as of now, there is so much excitation about building the next bigger thing and the next shinier thing. But at the same time, there are a lot of the steps that are missing. What happens in the education space? What happens in the workforce? What happens in healthcare? All of that, right? How our data is being handled. So far, the previous innovations are, I think, mostly for the favor of a few and not for the favor of the whole. So why not with this most amazing invention of our lifetime and potentially the whole humanities, which is having the intelligence that is beyond our intelligence, thinking about we have to be very responsible on that. And are we responsible enough now to be reaching to that stage to
Don't
bringing
know.
age?
I don't know that we're responsible enough, right? Because responsible AI is one of the big things I know that you're talking about. Another previous guest of ours, Donald Farmer, he's all, talking about responsible AI. And, this is where we're looking at how the data is being used, how are the predictive capabilities are being used. Privacy obviously is part of that whole thing. And that is a very big question. Are we really, in fact, ready to take that leap? I mean, when you look at narrow intelligence, which is what we have now, this is where the AI is designed to do one specific thing, right? Make this calculation or review this particular piece of data and come up with a recommendation. That's one specific job for that AI. When you talk about general intelligence, this is now where the intelligence is actually learning, right? And it's learning our emotions. So it's making me think about, the personal robots that are, now really starting to become part of the conversation in the market. How does that impact healthcare in the future when in terms of, memory care, elderly care, people who have a broken leg?
So I think one of the most important part that is missing. Here is the problem. Again, going back to the last 20 years that we created the brain emotional learning algorithms, the engineers, they don't most of the time, and I don't want to put everybody in one box, but mostly the builders, the engineers, they don't think about the bigger consequences of what they are building. They are thinking about the next big object, the next big milestone, the survival, the customer acquisition, but they don't think about what happens after that. There are so many products that they are good, but also they can be misused and abused. And by the time that people were building that, they weren't thinking about those parts. Think about like TikTok, right? The challenge that we have with the TikTok now. Think about the social media challenges that we have. Think about the mental health challenges that we have with the data privacy of the data that we have in social media. So that was one of the innovations that we built. They built 20 years ago. It's not that far. Only in 20 years, they changed everything. It changed how we interact with the brands. Your industry. It changed how we purchase things.
Well,
It changed everything. But at the same time, that change, right, was something that was good for us. But at the same time, a lot of challenges that we put the dust under the rug and we just tend to not see that, like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is becoming bigger, but we don't see that. Those snowballs of mental health challenges, those snowballs of privacy data, our data that is out there, it's not going to be fixed. It's only getting worse. But our attention to that, to fixing things, is only diminishing.
yeah, and that's definitely a big watch out, I would say, because as we're using this type of technology more and more, as to your point, Nima, the problem or potential problem only grows bigger and bigger because more and more information is being collected about us and is it being aggregated about us. That data obviously can be used for a lot of positivity. Like, for instance, insurance companies can use it to, predict health problems or the opposite to exclude people from coverage. It could be same thing with driving. Your driving record could be improved or reduced based on what's happening with the data of your capabilities and your behavioral, how you respond to certain things. And I don't know that we are yet at the point of capability where we can fix it. Maybe this is where the AGI, the general intelligence, will actually help us to come up with the ways to mitigate these problems.
So it's a tool. It's a bigger tool. It's like, okay, so we used to have wars with swords, right? So that's like 1,000 years old. Then the guns came. And if we hoped that guns would reduce wars, that didn't happen, right? Then the atomic bomb came to prevent wars, right? So the justification for Oppenheimer and all of that, it was to stop wars. But did it stop wars? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not a historian, but there are probably more people in your audience that they're historians and they would know that. But think about it as if we think that AGI would fix the problem that we have with AI, and that AI would fix the problem with the society. As long as that tool is in the hands of the right people, yes, absolutely. With the right intention, with the right mission and transparency, yes, that's a optimistic view that we can solve many of the challenges. But in reality, we humans are different than being like always good all the time, and there is always different people, right? So at the end of the day, I think it will be misused like any other technology that have been misused in our history.
Yeah, that's definitely the danger. And so these are the things that the great minds like you are thinking of, right? I know you've been to, a couple of global conferences where these are some of the challenges that are being discussed for our scientists, our best minds with to figure that out. And I think ultimately it's going to take a cross function of people, like usual, to come up with the biggest innovations and ways forward in human history. So having said that, let's talk about the Miami AI Club just a little bit. So, what is the target audience for that organization? Who normally comes? What sort of discussions are you guys having about these big problems that we just talked about?
Absolutely. So I think question that we came up with started with again back to that 20 years ago and brain emotional learning. That technology by itself, we made that open source available for the public to use that, and it has been used in the academia for a long time. It has now more than 400 industrial use cases in different industries, from robotics to drones to all sorts of different applications in the control engineering, and even for predicting stock prices. It's open source, so everybody can use that. Again, the technology can be used in the right ways or wrong ways. If we only hope for the best, think that, for example, in San Francisco, the builders would build the most responsible AGI, that's, I think, a naive approach. I think the best approach is we, the society, the community, get together with one mission, and that mission is the mission of Miami AI Club to create a positive impact through AI, and making sure that AI would relay and will be always a tool for the good of the society, and also preventing it from going to misuse and abuse. So building guardrails around the negative side. So at Miami AI Club, we built that mission. We said we are a group. We want to change the world. We are That's a small group of crazy people that think that they can change the world, and then trying to see where is the impact and how we can be helpful. So that was how Miami AI Club was built. It's an inclusive and exclusive group. Inclusive because we are all from different backgrounds, very diverse group, but at the same time exclusive because it's exclusive to a group that they are very much action based and they want to make a change. So we don't want to bring people that they don't want to do the actual job. We want people that are dedicated to reach to that mission. So it's built from different groups of the society, from the academia to public sector to private sector, executives, AI builders, investors coming together to try to figure out how the society is going to change during the next few years, and then try to mitigate the risk, and then try to go after the opportunities that would be benefiting the whole society. And it's a not-for-profit, so the whole game is for bringing the society to more of the advantages of the AI rather than the disadvantages of it.
Okay, well, having said that, I have just one last question for you. What would you say right now is the biggest opportunity for healthcare and AI? What do you think is that big driver that if we can do this, if we can get there in the next 5 years, 10 years, that's really going to create that positive and transformative impact for the human race?
Giving the answer very, very direct here. That's what we are doing now as a test bed, as an example. I'm going to give you one example. So we realized the number one killer of the children is cancer. Childhood cancer is the number one killer of the children. And so it's a big problem. But like any other problem, AI could be helpful. The how of that and how to do that, we have built the ecosystem around it with some amazing organization with their help. The foundations that have been in this area for a long time, they have been doing fantastic job for the children. We are creating a consortium to bring the startups, the innovations, the AI next to clinicians, the researchers, so that we can bridge that gap. And so there is the AI that would be directly having impact for their families, for the researchers, for the support of those children. So there are different projects, different startups that we are supporting now. And the idea is that creating a funnel, that funnel of these innovations that are coming to this ecosystem that we have built and bridging the gaps so that at the end of the day, with this mission, that no child is dying because of the cancer. And this is, I think, one of the most important small use cases of AI, and it can be expanded if we are successful, if we can actually show the value, actually show how much the metrics we have been improving. That could be a good hero story for the rest of the use cases in healthcare, that other people, other groups, not for profit, for profit, come together to bridge that gap through the use of AI and make AI adoption a reality for the healthcare world.
Well, I mean, that is a very noble mission, curing childhood cancer and, looking at some of the big opportunities we also talked about in this conversation with artificial general intelligence, responsible AI, removing some of the potential issues in terms of data privacy, bringing emotional intelligence into everything. I think that that's a really great way to wrap up this conversation, Nima. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your philosophies, your vision of where you see the opportunities for AI can take us specifically in healthcare. If people want to learn more about Hummingbird's AI or want to join the mission of Miami AI Club, how can they reach out to you to do that?
Absolutely. So for Hummingbird's AI, I forgot to mention what the company does. So it's a computer vision company, again, learning from biology, from how visual perception happening in our brain, and then bringing that to machines for basically making the machines more intelligent to understand the human in a privacy first and responsible manner. Basically, if somebody wants to see a demo or talk about that product, they can contact me to my email, nima@hummingbirds.ai. And then we're related to Miami AI Club. Our website is miamiaiclub.com. This is a community that is growing. I encourage everyone to visit the website. And if they are fit for those criteria that we are looking for, and they are really people that they want to change the world through the use of AI, we would love to have them in our community. It's a community that is not only limited to Miami, but we are open to everybody across the globe because the impact could be broadcasted globally. So we would be happy to have more of your audience in our group. And thanks, Simone, for the opportunity and dedicating time in this beautiful post-Christmas day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nima, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. And let's get more people thinking about bringing more emotions to the machines. Thank you. Have a great Thank you for joining us on the 10X Blueprint podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and want to stay ahead of the curve on the latest trends in AI, AR, and Web3, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube at Brandiverse Marketing. Together, we'll unlock the blueprint for 10X growth. Don't miss out on our next episode, and until then, onward and upward.